Thank you. Welcome, Minister Norman Foley, today to the Seanad. And I know it's our first motion of 2022, and Chairperson Deputy Paul Keogh here from the Joint Committee on Education, Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. Minister, this report deals specifically with the impacts in the first part of this lockdown. In fact, this report was produced this time last year, the 14th of January 2021, and it talks about the impact on our children and young people in primary and secondary schools. And I really do acknowledge the work in your office, Minister, and over the past year, nearly 2 years when you think of it, come this March, and the Department of Education to study from home and prioritise schools being open where possible. Our teaching staff, principals, caretakers, everyone that helps schools reopen and maintain safe social distancing. However, we do know that absences from school really have been detrimental for our children, and particularly the challenges in terms of the changes of routine for all children and children in special needs schools. Minister, in your contribution here to the Seanad, you mentioned 3 modules, I think, before you actually spoke to the recommendations of the report. In these modules that you have spoken about, I really do welcome, as you've mentioned, the 122 million of capitation funding that was made available to primary and post-primary schools. And you talk as well specifically around face masks, and I suppose the importance of face masks in reducing, I suppose, the spread of COVID-19. Just in relation to communications, this did arise as an issue, I think, in the last time that you were here in the Chamber, in the Seanad, just in relation to the tenor of some of the circulars that were provided to principals. So I suppose it is something that we would like to see, perhaps maybe from the department, that is improved, probably in the year ahead if there are further circulars. You've mentioned as well, just in relation to ventilation, the numbers that have gone out to schools. And you speak about minor works for the primary schools and special schools, totalling 45 million. And of course, this is crucial, absolutely crucial, because so many of our schools, we're getting higher numbers of students in some of our primary schools, especially in some of our rural areas when we don't have a safe number or high enough number of teachers to meet the demand. Minister, you've spoken here as well about the substitutes, and I suppose I would like to learn a little bit more about how that's working now at primary school level, considering the COVID absences that we're seeing. You mentioned previously that we're going to be bringing in final year students here to support with this, and then you've also, I think, referenced school transport. And then in relation to Leaving Cert, you've spoken here about the notice that we're going to get in relation to the Leaving Cert. And I understand very well the challenges that we have in terms of lack of data for Junior Cert for this particular cohort coming in this year. We do need greater choice for students. You've mentioned that it's going to be similar to what was done last year in terms of questions on the exam paper, but the assessment arrangements and so on, we do need that information as soon as possible, Minister. It is causing a lot of distress, anxiety, I know particularly in where I come from, definitely with students who meet me on a regular basis that are telling me this. In relation to, I think, what was mentioned by Senator Byrne here, and I suppose funding, I suppose I'm really pleased to see that there was over 6,000 places, I think, with our higher education institutes that were provided over the last 2 years for students to account for the accredited grading system. But it's going to be very challenging to provide something like that again this year. But over 6,000 places have been provided by our higher education institutes and by our Department of Further and Higher Education. Finally, Minister, I think on this, I suppose I did want to bring up the bullying, and in fact that was one of the recommendation points that I did want to bring up, and you have referenced it here. You mentioned the PDST Technology and Education team. I suppose my question is around the FUSE, the evidence-based programme from DCU. There was a FUSE anti-bullying and online safety. We heard from numerous occasions last year in the committee that had a really strong programme. Is there investment that's going to be rolled out for that particular programme, and particularly at regional level? I think they've engaged with maybe only 4,000 schools at secondary school level. In terms of the reviews, I suppose there was one other thing really on the bullying one that I thought was very strong, was Bernardo's roots of empathy. So I suppose, Minister, if I could ask you if there's anything there in relation to Bernardo's and potentially supports at primary school level when it comes to bullying. One of the other recommendations was gathering data. And you have spoken a little bit about reviews that will be done in the department, and of course I appreciate the value of reviews and gathering evidence, but we also need to gather data from our schools in terms of the incidences of bullying in our schools. Our deputy here, our chairperson, Paul Keogh, mentioned the programme that was shown on prime time last night and the issue of bullying that is happening in a lot of our schools. You mentioned, Minister, here that one case of bullying is too much. Well, actually, in the report that we did, We're seeing that it's 1 in 3, if not more. There are such high levels of bullying that are happening at a worldwide level. But it is incredible that we're seeing that, it's happening in our schools, particularly in an online cyber way. As I just finish up just on the last few final points. Minister, you mentioned again that there's €18 million in expansion for DEIS. Can I ask for the timeline on that? We have a DEIS school level 1 in Ballinasloe. Of course, no supports for DEIS at secondary school level. When is this going to be done? When are those schools going to be included? And then also digitalisation. We're seeing acceleration in so many areas, but for our schools we need broadband rolled out. I'll just pass it over to my colleague, Senator Byrne, and if I have time I may come in again at the end. Gurmil Magat.